Yeah, buddy, here we are. Monday nights. This is kind of an unusual time for us. 8 p.m. in the
What?
evening. 8 p.m. in the evening. And yeah, and Foil and I usually don't do interviews together. So this is something kind of a little different. So we're happy to have Jeremy, the also known as the alien scientist, on with us. I am Alara of Sirius. Of course, this is my awesome co-host, loyal to the Foil. What's up, Jeremy? Good to have you on.
Mute gate.
Oh, mute gate.
I forgot to unmute. Sorry.
It's cool, man. It's totally cool.
Hey, it wouldn't be an alien scientist show without one audio problem.
Of course. Of course. We're stoked to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, so for those that are unaware, Jeremy and I were in the same documentary recently. That's kind of how we met each other and became acquainted with each other. And I was on his show last night with some of the cast of that documentary called Secret Space UFOs Rise of the TR-3B. Anyhow, that led me to finding his channel, which there is endless stuff to dig into for someone like me. There's endless stuff to dig into on his channel and channels related to his. And so I've really enjoyed doing that, and I thought it would be great to bring him on and talk about some stuff that he knows a lot more about than I do and go into some of that tonight. So how are you, Jeremy?
I'm just chilling, you know.
Just chilling?
Talk about some technology and some physics and science and whatever you guys want to know.
Hell yeah. Yeah, you've had a channel on YouTube for like what, 14, 15 years now? Like it's
I created Alien Scientists in I think 2008, but I started like experimenting on YouTube I think like 2005, 2006, just dabbling in video with Microsoft Movie Maker on Windows 98 or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah, it's been a while. You really go into the nuts and bolts aspects. I mean, you are heavy on the physical sciences and then actually try to do the work and show the work, and you do experiments and host, you've been doing the APEC conferences, right?
APEC. So that's the Alternative Propulsion Engineering Conference. And it was kind of, we got the idea because of COVID. They held the Estes Park, which is Estes Park conference, which is a propulsion engineering conference run by Jim Woodward, famous for the Woodward effect. And when they ran that conference via Zoom, we realized that this was the future of doing these conferences. And now that people no longer had to take expensive flights and rent expensive hotel rooms to attend conferences in person once a year, if they're lucky, usually every once in 5 years, or they have a colloquium or a big get together at and I went to some of those at MIT as well that are open to the public and stuff for cold fusion and other things that they like other fringe science topics and stuff. So I'm very much into what's going on in technology and fringe science and stuff that's kind of been outcast and pushed to the side of the mainstream. And I gravitate towards like the taboo subjects because I feel like why can't we talk about this? Why can't people explore more about cold fusion and the possibility of lattice assisted nuclear reactions or supercavitation assisted nuclear reactions, that these fusion can happen via supercavitation, and other physical phenomenon that are being explored by several scientists out there currently. But yeah, so I don't know, I just got into all this like back in 2008, 2000. I was still like a freshman or a sophomore in college, studying physics, and got into Bob Lazar and was really researching all this UFO stuff to see if there was anything to it. I'd actually found Ed Fouché and made a couple of videos about that Mercury centrifuge engine and how the physics might work and how it could be related to what NASA was doing at the time with Gravity Probe B. And they had launched Gravity Probe B I think 2002, and the results came back I think 2007 or so. They published everything and all the data, and but there was lots of exciting stuff that was happening at the time. You know, that there was NASA was doing some of the Podkletnov experiment replications, and there was Boeing had opened up a division called GRASP, Project GRASP, to try to replicate Podkletnov's experiment and do their own tests, as well as BAE. And you saw that BAE, the guy, what's his name now? Project Green Glow.
Green Glow?
Yeah, if you look up Project Green Glow, the quest for gravity control, BBC News. This was recent. BBC covered the story. Ronald Evans, that was the guy's name, Ronald Evans. And we interviewed Ronald Evans on APEC. He presented to APEC and talked to our team of scientists and answered a whole ton of questions on what British aerospace was doing with him anyway, on anti-gravity research. So we tracked down the scientists who worked on this stuff, and it's been 20, 30 years since they worked on this. So it's no longer any legal justification to keep it classified. And a lot of this technology and this research needs to come out to the public more. And I'm glad that BBC and other mainstream news organizations are picking up on that finally. But it's thanks to people like Tim Ventura, really, who runs he hosts the APEC conference, and it was really because of him that I got into a lot of this stuff and kept this sort of crazy pipe dream alive.
Well, we've really seen them pick up these stories. I mean, the guys at the Drive, I can't think what the hell their names are. Like, we've seen a lot of coverage.
Rogaway, and
there was another guy too. There's two guys that are consistently writing on alternative propulsion. Keenan. Now I'm gonna have to look it up. But I mean, so what do you think it is that finally put the water over the dam? That finally let mainstream scientists kind of step forward and say, okay. I mean, even regardless of what, like Avi Loeb. I mean, we're seeing big name people. Tingley, that's what it was. We're seeing big name people really kind of come forward and say, okay, let's not talk shit, guys. Like, there might be something here. Let's look into this. What do you think precipitated that change?
Well, I think that it was they kept it taboo for quite a long time, through but it was Unsolved Mysteries and shows like that really promoted Bob Lazar and kind of got people like me interested in this idea that, hey, maybe there's what kind of stuff are they researching at these top secret government programs, and I read a book called Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman.
Oh, I read that.
Yeah, it was the autobiography of Richard Feynman, and he talked about he talked about his work on the Manhattan Project and which was like this top secret project that built the atomic bomb. And the whole idea of the Atomic Energy Commission keeping these big secrets, and that continued, and that physics knowledge is very powerful and worth lots and lots of money, and it's strategic and wins wars even. And what comes next after, Einstein even said, I don't know what World War III will be fought with, but World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones.
Hell yeah.
But so it's Pandora's box right now with some of the stuff that's coming out, and there's certain scientists backing off or just getting bought out. The ones that are all worthy seem to be getting picked up or bought off or bought out by different organizations, and they disappear. But they don't disappear, but they just go.
Well, I mean, like some people get real quiet. I mean, I don't know. You get people that come into the news cycle like Ning Li, right? You'll see it a whole bunch of, and then just suddenly nothing. Yeah.
It'll make a little bit into the news cycle, and then it doesn't really get picked up or shared or it doesn't go anywhere. So it just gets ignored by them the mainstream news.
I
For
got
the
a
most
question.
part.
I got a question for you, Jeremy. Let me thank a couple of these gold pills real quick, and then I got a question for you. Jonas Sark coming with the cookie. Thank you for the cookie. Sean Joe with the cookie. Miracle Girly with the cookie. Thank you guys. Really appreciate you. So, what did you think about the guy, the Israeli space head that came out and said that Trump knew about the aliens and that we already have a base on Mars? And what did you think about that when he came out and said that? And they covered it in the mainstream. Like, a few different people covered it. Like, the mainstream kind of covered it, and then they went real quiet. It was like, and that guy came like out of nowhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just the Jerusalem Post was the first one to cover it, and then some of the other like MSNBC and they picked it up, but it was they kind of like were like they didn't know what to say about it, and then it kind of faded. But the guy had some really interesting things to say.
Yeah, but they're interesting to say, and then coming from this intelligence head, it kind of holds some weight. But then again, it's
Right.
where's the evidence?
Right.
He should have had, if he's that head of intelligence, he's got access to documentation, and like why make the allegation if you have the the goods to back it up?
Right.
So
Bring
what do
the
you think that was
receipts.
all about? What do you think that was all about? What's your take on what that was all about?
I have there's different theories on what that was all about, because there was a lot of people there was a couple of people talking about that. It did get picked up pretty big. I wonder if I wonder if like it was a way to like prep people for like psychologically, just to like, all right, we're gonna hit them with something to like that really gonna shock them and get people ready, make sure this. But then again, it's like most people didn't blink an eye at the story or the idea of it. It's like,
No, and he comes with the most woo possible claim in the world.
Right.
There's a galactic federation, and they're waiting for humans. Like,
Right.
he doesn't even come with anything, that
They're waiting for humans to understand what space and spaceships really are, is what he said.
yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting because again, it goes back to some of that physics that I was talking about last night, which was and the physicists that they hired to really look into this problem. John Archibald Wheeler wrote a lot of papers on, and with that guy Bryce Dewitt, with this so-called invisible college that people talk about, and one of those was a solution to the ER-EPR paradox, and it's called quantum non-locality, and it's this idea that space is just an illusion, and that time is just an illusion, and that you can basically manipulate all of space and time if you have all the right quantum bits in physics, and it relates to that whole it from bit thing that I was talking about, that on the quantum level everything is digital, and that if we can figure out source code and get the materials right, we can manipulate source code using and basically exploit these quantum effects to warp space-time, and do some pretty amazing things. Hopefully, because I would hate to, there's ways around, everyone cites Einstein as, the speed of light is why we can't travel to other stars, and why aliens can't, how could they get here? Well, if you make some changes to some of the constants that we take as constant in, the speed of light being a constant, you realize that, it's actually a combination of two other constants, the permeability and permittivity of free space. And there might be ways to warp those constants using, specialized materials. And,
right.
So it's theoretically possible. There's math and papers showing, how it can work, all in accordance with, accepted physics, battle tested, Einsteinian physics and quantum mechanics. And, we're at the verge now where I think that they've already done it, and they're doing it in labs, all around. and that it's time for us to, you know, bring this technology out to the public and really do what TTSA promised to do with, you know, their investors. I want to build a craft. I want to show one working prototype or one working, you know, concept experiment that can prove this stuff actually works. So,
Amen to that.
yeah, it would be really amazing. And but again, it's going to take a lot of work, and we test all the claims out there, and we test a lot of different theories and ideas. You know, but we've got a couple interesting experiments that we intend to run here soon that should yield some interesting results. I'll just say that.
Definitely looking forward to see what you guys come up with, for sure.
Yeah, it deals with light and like photonic waveguides. We're going to do a lot of these waveguide experiments with trapped light, and you know, this whole idea of what light does inside of materials and getting different effects. So we're gonna try a couple different experiments, simple ones first, and then, you know, if those proof of concept experiments work with, you know, cheap materials like fiber optic cables and stuff like that, then we'll try to get more funding for more, you know, advanced types of materials and stuff. I got a quote on what it would cost to make what I want to make, and it's probably about you know, we could probably do it for, you know, $100 grand or so. Like it's $20,000 just to buy this, just to get the disc manufactured of the material that I want, and then we have to sputter coat it with a layer of graphene sandwich. Basically graphene between two other layers.
How are you guys getting the funding now? What's your plan with that?
Well, we were pretty much self-funded right now. Run out of a battery shop, so he runs the hybrid battery business, and we do like a lot of the experiments in the background at the shop there, and like just people sending us materials and supplies and stuff, and equipment too. You know, we ask, we'll put a list of equipment that we'd like and where to buy it, and, you know, some people that want to see this experiment done, you know, we'll sometimes step in and buy the equipment for us. So
what's this has to be something that people are willing to throw in.
Yeah, well, we're getting some good attention. It's getting, you know, the attention of, you know, we get a lot of, you know, probably like 100 people watching it live, you know, sometimes more if there's a you know, a big guest and stuff. But, you know, if you know, some of the views on this, you know, it gets like a couple thousand views, and we get people, but it's all scientific minded people, so it's all like people who are interested in this type of stuff. And also we get the occasional, you know, venture capitalist who dabbles in physics and stuff and is like, hey, you know, I might want to invest in something like this, you know, and people like you know, because you're doing it out of, you know, just pure drive, and, you know, it's not like no one's like, it's not some organization that was put together, you know, and where there's questionable origins or you know, connections there and stuff. So because it's just like, no, we're like 100% crowdfunded, organic, and we're just dudes in a garage trying to, you know, build stuff.
Where does your passion for this come from?
I don't know, just all the stupid movies growing up, you know, like batteries not included, you know, The Flight of the Navigator, you know. I love those.
Man, Flight of the Navigator.
I just loved UFO movies, E.T., you know. I just loved every UFO movie that came out from the 80s and the 90s, like, because I grew up with all that stuff, and that was just like it was just always been my favorite subject, the alien stuff. I don't know.
Have you seen a UFO? Have you personally seen one ever? So you're just
what?
See, There you go. I'm
Never
with you.
seen anything crazy. I got this guy down in Rhode Island here that wants to go out and take me to a spot and show me some stuff, and I'm gonna bring my camera, but I
There you
haven't
go.
got out there yet. But it's gonna happen. I just got done with a big job, and I'm gonna take a week off and do my taxes and all that stuff. Oh.
Right.
When did you realize all this stuff was possible, and you know, when did you realize that?
Well, I
When did you
just
make that-
always knew, like, it's got to be, you know, there's got to be some way to defeat gravity. There's got to be some kind of technology out there that,
Right.
and where is it, and how does it work, and who's working on it, and, you know, and how do these programs really work, and where are they operating out of, and all that kind of stuff. And I've tried to do a lot of research into just, you know, what, you know, the DARPA. I've gone through all of you know, DARPA is a super interesting organization. And
Don't get Foil started on DARPA.
I know, right?
Ooh-wee.
One of my favorite things to talk about. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, so they're just, and the Jason group, which was set up as this advisory group after Sputnik. We were trying to, like, you know, outsmart the Cold War, the intelligence Cold War, the scientific intelligence Cold War. Basically, they basically created this team of elite scientists called the Jason Group, and that operated up until, you know, Dick Cheney pretty much neutered it.
Imagine that.
And that was for, I think, reasons of keeping this UAP technology kind of a secret and preventing, you know, the too much about the development of that. I think that's right around that time, because this was like 2001, Disclosure Project, 9/11, boom,
Right.
like back to back, and that's what set us up for the last 20 years. And but yeah, the DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, specifically, I looked at where DARPA was doing their you know, where they sent their recruitment people to go look for the next scientists, and where they picked up, they do call for papers, you know, they go around and look for people, subject matter experts who are, you know, scientists and who are, you know, interested in certain fields which are related to things that are classified things that they want to apply that concept to, or research to, so to say. So what DARPA will do is they'll go out and research and reach out to these subject matter experts, and you know, ask them, hey, would you like to be on board? Or sometimes the subject matter experts will write the grants, and DARPA will pick it up and say, you know, hey, we're gonna fund this, and we're gonna give you funding and all that. So there's always scientists looking for grant money and looking for grants and research funding, and there's always DARPA funders looking for scientists to throw money at for different applications. So it's an interesting business, and one of the things that was what led me onto a lot of the propulsion physicists who worked on a lot of the real science and stuff is the STAFE conference, section F, where they have, which was the propulsion side of that STAFE conference, and then that branched off into you know, Estes Park conference, and STAFE 2 took over after that, and there's another conference too. I can't think of that right now. Maybe I'm getting confused with the other one, but in any case, these are places where I go and you know, find the minutes and the notes and look up the scientists, and you know, you'd find a lot of these propulsion proposals that, you know, got picked up by DARPA contracts. So you get to kind of like trace the scientists and the research to direct source.
Let me ask you this: we've seen a lot of patents come out in the past few years. I mean, dealing specifically with alternative propulsion techniques. What do you think shows the most promise?
Well, I mean, the supercavitation is certainly what's going on with hypersonics and you know, ICBMs and that kind of, you know, defense research. A lot of applications into that supercavitation technology. This triangular spacecraft you're showing is is like a Biefeld-Brown effect. That's old news. That was, you know, stuff that they, you know, did research into at Bonson Labs back in the 60s with John Lear's
What'd she
father.
have up there? The TR3B
That was
patent?
the
Is that what was up there?
John St. Clair TR3B
Yes.
patent.
What do you think of that guy? Let me just ask you, have you seen his other patents that he has filed? Every photon
Yeah, the walking
spacecraft?
through walls one.
Yeah,
I
walking
think
through
it's a bunch
electric
of nonsense.
dipole.
I think
Yeah,
it's
full body teleportation and
Full body
shit. Like he's
teleportation. What is this, man?
it seems like, you know, almost like I don't know, like it's almost like Cold War science propaganda. Like, do we have this technology or don't we? Does it really? Do we?
right.
We
Like,
could have this technology. What if we do?
would they tell us? Would they just put a patent out there like, hey, looky what we did? Like, I don't think they would really tell us if that was the case. What he did do, that he had put the patent out there for, was the cellular prepaid phone service. So whatever else he's doing, that man is probably sitting comfortable at this point. You know, like he literally patented the cellular prepaid phone cards in the midst of all his other crazy stuff. This is what he comes up with.
Yeah,
what do you,
it's I don't know if it's a real guy, but it smells to me like, you know, it's kind of like, how did Lou Elizondo patent all those, you know, electrohydrodynamic boat, you know, patents?
Seems a little sus.
You know, well, if you're connected to the right people, they don't want to publish under themselves because
Right.
so they need other people to publish their work in ways, and they use it as collateral in the intelligence like world. So like, I don't know, it's kind of just it's an interesting dynamic of how it ends up, you know, one and we'll find out. I can't wait. Sal Pays, I kind of
I was just going to ask you about him. Okay,
I
go
kind of
ahead.
suspected the same thing might have been going on with Sal Pays. Like maybe he's like an espionage author where, you know, it's like all the money that they stole from, I mean, all the tech that they stole from Russia, you know, that they have to patent in the U.S. has to go through somebody. Someone's got to patent it, right? So who's doing it? You know, that was
and for you guys in the chat, the Salvatore Pais guy, inertial mass reduction device that he had put a patent on, some kind of
a fusion reactor.
Plasma compression fusion. Yeah,
Yes.
like,
Let me
you know, what do you think
all
of the
he's got.
science behind it? Like, these are legit. This legitimately has potential. Do you or no?
It's interesting because, you know, both. You know, I know a scientist who mentioned that concept of the fusion reactor to a Navy scientist guy who was visiting MIT.
And then magically there's a patent for it now.
And then a couple months later, this patent appears for it in the
Ta-da!
Navy.
Right.
So I knew, like, it's maybe it's a coincidence, maybe not. But it's certainly interesting, and we're gonna certainly find out more about if he's, you know, Lou Elizondo has really like displayed very little like technical knowledge or scientific knowledge that you know to date. And you ask him anything like scientific or technical, and he just falls flat. So he just clearly is not. I don't think he's, you know, knowledgeable enough to have published those patents himself.
He's just the face on the operation. Like, he talks a good game, and then that's.
On the other hand, I don't know Sal Pays because he's never spoken publicly. I don't know, you know, who this guy is or anything about him. But
he even named the whole Pace effect, you know, after himself at this point, right?
So the end of this month, or I think it's the end of this month, he's going to be on Kurt Jamungal, Theories of Everything with Kurt.
Is he?
Oh, really?
I'm a fan of that podcast. I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah, Kurt is awesome, and you know, Kurt just made me a moderator today, so thank you, Kurt.
Oh, awesome!
I'm now a moderator on his channel.
Yeah, I love his channel.
I've given him a ton of great content and questions from like some really. I've every time he gets like a good guest on that he needs some good questions, man. We come up with some good stuff on my team of people, man. It's.
I really like him. I like Lex Friedman.
Yeah, he's great.
I saw him interview somebody where he
great.
really nailed him down. Who was that?
No, Kurt and Lou did an interview that I had you watch.
That's what it was.
And he did pretty good with that. Kurt did pretty good with that.
He's getting Lou on again, so
we're
gonna give him some more questions and stuff.
Awesome.
He's been following some of this stuff, and you know, I watched that Who's Lou documentary, and there's no like real smoking gun that says, oh, this guy's really a bad guy. You know, there's some CIA connections with all those TTSA guys, you know, and I understand why that makes a lot of people nervous and stuff.
Well, if you're working in that field, you're gonna have, you're gonna have ties to a variety of organizations that probably have some suspect motives at some point, right?
Well,
like, is anybody gonna be clean?
It goes back to that question you asked me before about why why is so much of this coming out now? It's because it has to, because they can't stop it with the internet, and there's too much. There's nothing that they can really do about it except the only thing they can is create the fake disclosure and then lead people off with that, and or it's not really fake disclosure, it's the CIA's safe version of disclosure, you know, and that doesn't
implicate people in horrible criminal activity.
Yeah. It doesn't, and also, I don't know, there's probably some stuff that we don't know about, scientists that have happened to scientists for secrecy and stuff like that, and I don't know. I do know that I hit on a jackpot about last year, last October or November, I think. It was when
Right, Patterson.
Story. That Right Patterson story.
I was gonna ask you about. That's so funny. Like you everything I was gonna talk to you about, you bring up on your own. That's awesome. Yes. What the hell is going on there?
Yeah. So that was amazing. I found that guy that he actually I think he is getting out of federal
Vincent
prison.
Kemp.
Yeah, he's getting out of federal prison in a couple months, but he got sentenced for, taking 1,000 pages of classified documents home with him, which was just his study notes from what he was working on at his job. And his job was at the terahertz and ultrafast photonics lab at Wright State, and he was doing the documents and the research he was doing was for NASIC, which is the National Aerospace Intelligence Center. So this is super interesting. I mean, they didn't obviously publish the documents. The Air Force OSI
Right.
was there. The original story that they published was interesting because they said that they were there for marijuana plants at his residence.
That was the most ridiculous thing, right?
But then they
Thank
said
you,
that he
Darren
also
Max.
did get caught with marijuana plants. It said that the cops went there for the marijuana plants and that they found the classified documents while they were, finding the marijuana plants. So there's like this whole like weird story. I really got to get a hold of this guy when he gets out of federal prison. I want to find out when his release date is. I'm going to do some research because I've been planning a trip out to Ohio. No, I haven't. I got to write to him. I got to get a hold of this dude because I literally want to pick him up from prison.
Right.
That'd be great.
Yeah. We'll tape it for you.
Man.
Yeah.
Oh, how awesome of a story would this be? Because this is my story, man. This is like, I can't believe I stumbled upon that because like the original article said about the marijuana plants, and I was like, well, all right, this doesn't make sense why the Air Force OSI, the Office of Special Investigations, is there for marijuana plants. So like I went and looked up. I'm like, well, where's
buddy.
there's no evidence trail. There was no they didn't have a normal arraignment for him. So normally there'd be an arraignment in the court, but he went straight to federal court.
Yeah. At first they didn't even charge him with any of that, did they? They
didn't charge him with none of it.
It was really weird.
Yeah. So
If you're holding classified documents, don't be growing weed in your pad, man. It's a bad idea.
It's probably a good plan.
They probably had to call the FBI in and have, because once they find out he's taking classified information and mishandling classified information, they have to call in a whole bunch of people to just to make sure he's not selling it to anyone. They got to go through all his like contact history and trace back everyone.
Well, that's what they tried to allege at first, wasn't it? That maybe he was passing it off to,
right? Yeah.
Russia or China, of course.
But no, he was just being a dumbass and taking his work home with him. And regardless, we don't have access to any of those 1,000 pages of classified documents because they were all taken by the Air Force OSI and put back in safe keeping. But I was able to go and look up Isaac Kemp's thesis paper on Wright State University's website, and some of his graduates curriculum vitae, what he's published, which is what we do when we dig into people like this. And it was interesting. He wrote his thesis paper on polariton condensate and superconductivity in polariton condensate. And that's directly related to that Sal Pei's patent on the the PZT superconductor stuff.
Oh, okay.
This is a
Let me pull that
much
one up
better
real quick.
way of creating room temperature superconductors. Is the research that this guy was working on for Wright State. So it all kind of links up a little bit.
Funny how that works.
It's funny how there's this some continuity in the physics here. So this has led us, maybe that piece of Roswell debris that they had with the layered layered bismuth and magnesium waveguides is a polariton condensate material that is able to trap light inside of it in the form of exciton polaritons. And I think that this is exactly what is needed to create these warp drives. Is a bunch of internally reflected light, and pumping tons of it into the system until until you can basically you alter that permeability and permittivity of free space just in that one two-dimensional bubble that surrounds
in the area.
The craft.
Yeah.
And that's all you need to do.
Huh.
And if you do it the right way and you squeeze some of the quantum states in one direction on one side, then you create these boundary conditions in quantum mechanics, what's called the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, that we can only know something's momentum or its position to a degree of certainty of h bar over 2 pi, and or h bar over 2. I think the bar implies the pi. But those two momentum, once you nail down the position, the momentum instantly jumps to infinity. And so you can essentially control that 0 point field around the object, which mediates the inertia, the inertial mass. And then it might be a way to dampen or change the inertial mass of your object. So you can take these 90-degree turns at breakneck speed and do these kinds of maneuvers that are witnessed, if these are indeed physical craft. But then again, it gets into, does the occupant feel those G forces inside? Can we fly a human in that thing then, or is it or is the radiation fields that this thing put off too dangerous, and other effects, because it does create quite a bit of radiation when you create these types of high energy plasmas.
So you think there's a great potential that these could be unoccupied?
Yeah, they might be UAVs, where they're unoccupied aerial vehicles, unmanned aerial vehicles. Where they're flown by remote control drones, because it would be much easier for a drone to take those kind of G forces and also, handle any kind of radiation signatures that, might be pumping off this thing if it's giving off microwaves or what have you. Because some of the stuff, in order for it, then another thing, aspect of it is once you get up if you can get up to speed, you have to move the air out of the way in front of your craft. So that's what they use these microwaves with the supercavitation effect. And that stuff was, started back at Rensselaer Polytech back in the 80s with Lake Marabou, who, did all the microwave propulsion tech research for NASA, the beam ships basically. And they started with this ground-based laser on a disc, and then they eventually moved up to these surface lasers, surface effect lasers, which are the polariton lasers, and they operate on a different type of lasing principle, using polaritons instead. Like some of them use actually the dielectric from jellyfish. I thought that was interesting. There's a whole video on it if you go look it up. But yeah, they use this they use that dielectric stuff for these microwave propulsion, and then that's how the hypersonic missiles work, and these supercavitating torpedoes too, because they literally they blast microwaves at the water about a foot or 3 feet in front of the nose cone, and it superheats it so fast that it boils instantaneously,
Right.
and explodes, completely evacuating that space which the torpedo is moving into. So it evacuates the space and the water in front of the torpedo as it moves. So these torpedoes can go like super fast underwater.
There's no drag.
Yeah.
Do you think the little tic tac things, you think those are unmanned, and do you think they're ours? What's your take on that?
I personally, because of where the Tic Tac was filmed and seen, the majority of the sightings in that SoCal range, off the coast of San Clemente, between San Clemente Island and Camp Pendleton, and then the other location just off the coast of Norfolk, Virginia. There's a lot of BAE and Norfolk Lockheed Martin systems that operate in those areas, and I think that some of this might be what's called electronic countermeasure technology. I interviewed a guy named T.D. Barnes, who was the head of special projects out at Area 51, and I asked him, what do you make of these pilots and what they say that they're seeing, and he said it's our spoofing technology. He said we have these things that can paint objects in the sky that can look like pretty much anything, and make it real life and visual, and with lasers, and they can also use equipment to put it on radar too, so it can create the radar signature. So you'll not only see it visually, but you'll see it on your radar systems too. And he said you wouldn't believe that the technology that we develop out there. It's basically our job is to learn how every single sensor on your aircraft or the Russian MiGs work, and then how to circumvent it or spoof it, or how to trick it.
Yeah, makes
Our
sense.
job. So that was our
sense.
job. So and you don't and there's no way that Fravor or Elizondo or any of these guys would have been read into that special access program unless they worked out at Area 51 developing it, like with those guys. And there's only a handful of people in the world that probably know about it. So including this guy, who only knows about it secondhand because he was such a higher up, and he knows so many people from that, and talks and knows about all this stuff. Plus he's an electronics geek, and that's why they hired him to go and work on a lot of this stuff. That's what a lot of what they did out there. They'd build full mock-ups of the Russian radar, and then try to spoof it, try to fly around it.
I have somebody in the chat asking you to define the term quantum, because it gets tossed around like lollipops at a dentist's office.
Okay, so if you were to think of terms of scale, right? A meter, right? A centimeter, not quantum. A millimeter, not quantum. You go down to microns, still not quantum. Even nanoscale, still not quantum. You got to go down to femtometers, to get down to the quantum.
So sub-nano.
So
Right.
quantum, we get down to this thing called the Planck scale. That is what the quantum is that this idea of this idea that the Greeks had early on was this idea of atomos, this idea of that if you pounded a rock and broke it into pieces and then eventually created dust, and then what if you just kept grinding up the dust, and how much can you grind up the dust until you can't get smaller pieces?
You get to the smallest indivisible part.
Right, and that's what they called the atomos, the smallest, most indivisible part. And that's essentially what the quantum is. Of course, we can't really get there with rock powder, because the magnetic attractive forces of the atoms themselves will stick and clump together, and long before you can ever get to a single atom of something. But there's that level where basically, and there's also a theory that you can't ever really touch anything because it's just the electric fields that are repulsing in the atoms. There's still space between, there's still technically space between everything, so there's that whole aspect to it. So what that is essentially is that's the quantum. I would call that probably the scale at which you approach the quantum. It's where I push down on the table, and really there's not really any space between my finger and the table if you think about it, but there is in the quantum. That's called quantum space, because it's beneath, it's beneath physical reality. It's beneath the physical reality, because the physical reality doesn't care that there's a little bit of space and that there's atoms in there and there's a physical attraction at that low level. It just cares that my finger's pushing off the table, and that there's they're touching, essentially, if you can ever define the word touching, and I don't know.
Right, no, it's a fantastic explanation.
But that's the explanation
really
of what a
was.
quantum is. So the quantum is basically the space between your finger and whatever you're touching when you're touching something. That's the quantum. You're still touching it, but there's still quantum of space between it, and that's the scale at which you're dealing with the outer electron orbits of atoms repelling each other.
Yeah, that
Trying
was
to
a
see
great
if I-
breakdown.
And anything
Actually, I
below
never
that,
heard it
and there's a
explained
lot
that way.
below that. It gets really small, but even below that level, when you really get down to the scale of the force, the scale of what's going on there in the nucleus, because the nucleus is this really, really tightly bound bundle that if you were to put it, if it was a basketball, the electron would be a baseball floating at the, if it was a basketball on the 50-yard line of the Giants stadium, it would be the electron would be orbiting on the rooftop. That's
Right.
how much space is inside of the atom. So
Yes,
There's
there's more space in it, even like there's more space in your body than there is any sort of matter. There's a ton of empty space in everything.
yes, there's tons of empty space and everything. It's kind of like this. I don't know. They still don't know what matter is and what energy is, or what they still don't quite have a clear physics model of what it all is and how it all fits together. We kind of have these quark models of what particles are and how they fit together and stuff, but we don't really have a full, we have the standard model, and that's all we have, and currently
They're
that's
still
our best.
filling in some blanks there as well.
Let me thank a couple people real quick. Thank you, UFO Mark. Appreciate you very much. I see I missed a couple other people up here. Let me pause this real quick. I have a quick question for you too, Jeremy. Thank you, Miracle Girly. Appreciate it. 8 Virtues. Thank you so much for the can. Miracle Girly again. Thank you, Miracle Girly. Very kind of you. Yes, of course, hugs right back to you and Keshin, Adam. So, say this stuff gets built. What's the plan for protecting it? So that, it falls in the hands of the people and not the bad guys anymore like they so often like to do. What's the plan for that?
Well, that's kind of our plan is with APEC, is that we're encouraging disclosure on the scientific front, and we're going out and finding the scientists who worked on this, and interviewing them, getting them to present what they know, and encouraging, anyone that knows more than us, to share, and we do get people, who are critical and say, they say certain things, that are critical of different guests, and do share. Sometimes they do share good information, So they all got that. That's the whole idea, is that we have an open forum or a space where this can all take place, where that it can come out to the public. Because right now it's hidden away in some shadowy stovepipe SAP, special access program, where it's classified and we can't get to it. So the goal here is to at least reach out to this. So a lot of these classified work is done by graduate students or is done by university professors, and so there's always a graduate student who stumbles across something and he learns about something and knows something, and so we get those kinds of people, and we try to look around for those types of people too, and seek them out, because we know where certain things are, just from the nature of the research. As we get deeper into the nuts and bolts of the science, we figure out who the subject matter experts are on these subjects, and you just start digging around. There's lots to learn there when you get into this stuff. This is like,
yeah.
I've seen the argument being made recently that overclassification itself is actually a security threat to us. Keeping all of this information segmented and compartmentalized and overclassified, where there's nobody knows what anybody else is doing, that this is actually a threat. Like were this information be taken by whatever bad actors, like it would be less likely to happen if we had a more open forum and we had a more, we just had more recourse to the information that was actually available to us. I assume that that's something that you would agree with.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's either two things, right? Also, you start at the base levels, that it either is real and exists, and we're about to open Pandora's box, or all this is bullshit and it's fruitless, and we're completely wasting all of our time. In which case, there's nothing for them to worry about. But let's assume that that we're going, that there is something there, that the UAPs are real, and that there is technology that can take us across the cosmos and beyond in times that would make Einstein make his head spin, right. Maybe a little bit. But let's assume that there is that technology. Then you don't want that to fall in the hands of the military industrial complex, because they're just going to build weapons out of it. And they're just going to keep it secret, and then, or they're just going to, it just can't do any good for humanity if it's locked up like that. On the contrary, we don't want, North Korea again, or some of these other, we don't want a crazed dictator getting a hold of, godlike technology and godlike powers.
Correct.
We want to use these powers to free ourselves and free humanity, and not use them to, and we have to, like, it's almost like humanity's like growing up. It's humanity's passing its teenage years and getting into adulthood, and it's realizing, hey, we're basically going to create so much technology, we're going to become gods.
The shit will either free us or it will shackle us in chains.
Exactly.
If we don't up our spiritual game, it will. I mean, I think that's kind of a clear thing that needs to happen with the human race. Like, it's, you can have all the technology you want, but if you don't have an understanding of the universe that you live in,
yes,
and how things are connected, and consciousness, and you know what I'm saying? Like, but I feel like that's starting to change that dynamic a little bit. I don't know. I feel like at least people are becoming aware of the deception on this planet, and that is going to open the door to them maybe starting to seek answers to some of the more, metaphysical questions about their reality and their world and life. And
yeah, and then it gets into the issue is like, well, are we the children and the government our parents? Like, do we really need chaperones to tell us, what we can and can't know? Or
no, sir, we do not.
Exactly.
We do not.
Absolutely not. This is, what do you think about? I gotta ask you this while you're on. What do you think about, we've got all this information, we know stuff has been built in these special access projects and stuff, right? There's people that have worked on, there's people out there that know, and maybe they even have stuff, maybe they have the receipts, right? But they're afraid to come forward because crimes were committed in the process, whatever, like this. So I'm bringing this up because I want to know, what do you think about there being some kind of push to protect people,
UFO amnesty,
UFO amnesty, to protect these people at a certain level or certain levels, so that encourages more and more of them to come forward before they pass away and share the information and share what they have and help us, help you, your people, help APEC, what you're doing, achieve your goal. You know, what do you think about that topic?
Well, don't bother to interrupt your
Yeah.
guests to call out this donation.
I know.
Sorry, I'll do it for them.
There you go. Thanks, New England Dirt Roadie.
New England. Yeah, I'm from New England. I live in Rhode
Right?
Island. So.
Look at you, right?
Roll call. Where are you from?
Right? We're down here in
84?
Christian Iraq.
Oh, we live
right?
in Christian Iraq.
The dirty,
yeah.
dirty. We're in the dirty South.
Yeah, buddy. You like that, Christian Iraq, Jeremy? That's what Foil started that, and when I got here, I was like, oh yeah. I finally understood. I said, oh yeah, this is Christian Iraq. There's no doubt about it. So is that a subject
like
you don't
it.
want to touch, or are you thinking about it?
No, I'm just like taking it in. I was like, wow, and then, you know, like Christian Iraq. This is like, as opposed to, yeah.
It is.
Iraq.
It's something like that, man. Something like that. I'm telling you.
I didn't
What do
get
you
it
think
till I
about
came
UFO
here.
amnesty? Right?
Yeah.
Well, you don't understand it until you're here. Once you're
Yeah,
here,
until
you
you're
fully
here.
understand it. You're like, oh,
UFO
okay.
amnesty. So UFO amnesty. I think that the UFO file is connected to a lot of things which there is no amnesty for. You can't beg amnesty for. I think once we realize the whole scope of it, when you really start digging into it, apparently, I mean, if you read some of Nick Redfern's books and do some of the research into it, the Dorothy Kilgallen was this reporter, and she was about to write this big story on the Roswell UFO crash and everything back in before she wound up dead of an overdose, right after Marilyn Monroe died of an overdose.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently Marilyn Monroe heard the story from Jack Kennedy and went and told Dorothy Kilgallen, and that there's this whole, you know, there's a whole bunch of CIA assassinations that took place to cover up this UFO file and to keep this stuff a secret. That goes back to some real dirty, you know, old school CIA stuff. And, you know, when you really start digging into all that and do the research, I think that that's going to open up a can of worms that there's no amnesty for. And, you know, that's, I think, what some of the intelligence agencies who took part in that cover up are afraid of.
Right.
And rightfully so, because, you know, if they killed the president and got away with it, then, you know, that's
Right.
ouch. You know, hey, how do you move forward from that? It's like,
So you think it's a no-go proposition from the beginning?
yeah,
Or
I
is
don't
there
think
a certain
it's
line
possible.
that can be drawn in the sand with it, where if you took things this far, you can get a pass, get the stuff out, right? Or if you crossed this particular line, forget about it.
Howard Hunt, after the Watergate trial, he told his lawyer at the Watergate trial, his lawyer asked him, you know, what's the big secret? What are they covering up? And according to his lawyer, he said it's the ET. He said we're not alone, and we don't want the commies to get that technology. That was what he said to his lawyer. So it's like there's some crazy stuff going on with the whole thing. If you really dig into the deep state and the UFO file.
What do you think the likelihood that China and Russia don't have the technology? Because I'm firmly convinced that if we have it, they have it.
Yeah, if we got it, they got it. Of course, you know, China's 10-20 years ahead of us with semiconductor production technology and stuff.
Yeah.
And we got that chip shortage going on all of a sudden. It's, you know, they're putting a lot of that infrastructure somewhere, and it's not toward building chips for us, and they're shutting us out on purpose. And it's like, and the U.S. is just sitting there like, we got Biden, you know,
Oh God.
doesn't even know what day of the week it is, let alone
Right.
what planet it is on, or when his next you know, I don't know. It's just, I feel like there's misleadership everywhere, and that we should have been moving manufacturing over to this country, you know,
Should
a
have
decade ago.
been done,
and,
did that. Yes.
and we got some catching up to do, and a lot of work to do, if we want to win this arms race that a lot of people are in denial about and still don't even know what's going on. But I guarantee you the Chinese are putting money towards this and they're interested in it. I guarantee you the Russians are too. Why wouldn't they be? And I know the U.S. is too, to a certain degree, but it's a small group of people, and they're trying to keep it that way as much as possible. They don't really talk about the technology side of this. You don't hear it on the mainstream news. And there's certain words, just like in the Manhattan Project, where they blacklisted the word atomic. There was nuclear. Any of these certain key buzzwords that were related to the Manhattan Project's research were blacklisted from the media. And it's the same things kind of going on with all this science stuff too. It's like there's a lot of science which doesn't get out there and won't get picked up, even though it's really awesome and amazing, important stuff. No, don't talk about that. It's on that edited list news of things we can't talk about.
Absolutely. I mean, China's up there. They've putting their own space station up there. They've been trying to keep up as far as on every level,
and all that.
Numbers of launches. Yes, right. They're up there.
Well, you just go on Google Scholar when you do the research on any of the subjects that related to what I just mentioned, like polaritons or metamaterials or any of that stuff. The Chinese are doing most of that stuff.
Yes, they are.
Of that stuff.
Can we talk about that subject for just a minute? Because that stuff absolutely fascinates me, and you're here, so just I know there's no way to cover that in briefly, but just for the people here that have never heard of this before, could you just briefly explain what metamaterials are and quasi-crystals, and where they can find more information about this subject?
So a metamaterial is just a material that's been manufactured specifically to have properties for that specific optical properties. So like it can polarize light or bend light. It can have a negative refractive index, which means it actually bends light. It can bend light backwards. It has there's also what are called phase conjugate mirrors, which are a whole nother thing. They actually do like a basic form of quantum computing. They can basically they reflect at whatever they reflect back at the angle that they're hit at in a weird way. It's a weird type of mirror. So those are metamaterials too, technically, because they're generated to have these types of special properties from the material science side of the so it's engineered from the atomic level up to have specific electromagnetic or optical properties. But then there's so quasi-crystals are another interesting thing. They were discovered by this guy Dan Schechtman, who did his postdoc at Patterson Air Force Base, right? The Air Force Institute of Technology, I believe. And he was studying something out there, and then a couple of years later, he's the one that discovered quasi-crystals and published the first discovery of this quasi-crystal, which had five-fold symmetry, and it was actually built out of two tiles rather than a single tiling pattern. It was two different tiles. And began discovering more materials where these quasi-crystal phases would appear, and realized it was just another phase similar to there's three phases that you could have. There's the amorphous, which is like amorphous. Look up amorphous metal. This is like that metallic glass stuff. And that's what everything's like randomly packed. Then there's crystallization, and then there's quasi-crystal, which is it appears a lot in bimetallic and trimetallic alloys, but it also appears in
metal band. Whoops, my bad. How do you spell amorphous? I'm not too good with my spelling, man. So how do you spell it?
O-U-S, not I-S. O-U-S. amorphous, like PHOUS.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Normally I'd be making jokes at this point.
Right. She's trying to be respectful because you're here. Yeah.
So they also found that quasicrystals appear after nuclear blasts. So if you look up quasicrystals and nukes, you'll find that, like, you know, wherever, if they go out to like the Trinity site and find pieces of trinitite, it has quasicrystals in it. And they actually, the quasicrystals that form tell you about the energy and magnitude of the blast. So it's a way, if you can go, like, they could go to nuclear blast sites and just pick up some of the debris and look at the quasicrystals in it and be able to tell, like, information about the nuclear blast from the structure of the quasicrystals. Quasicrystals, because they can have, you know, higher dimensional symmetries, which are forbidden by, you know, like in normal lattice, you know, single cell lattice structures. They actually, you know, they might be a way, basically, if you think about, you know, resonating a crystal, if you shake a crystal, you get these resonances and you know, the normal dimensions. But if you wanted to access things in higher dimensions, you could use a quasicrystal, because have the higher dimensional symmetries could potentially, you know, resonate in higher dimensions if you could resonate the structure of the crystal. So it's interesting. There was a study that was done in Princeton by a guy named ArtiQuLate, and he found that quasicrystals could bend fiber optic signals at 90 degrees without losing any signal quality. And he did that by building a model of a quasicrystal using, you know, 1 centimeter rods, glued all these 1 centimeter rods together and built this, you know, perfect scale model of a quasicrystal. And then they used, because they used the 1 centimeter rods, he used a 1 centimeter microwave laser. That was the wavelength of the laser was 1 centimeter. And so that integrated with the crystal structure because the wavelength matched the crystal structure. So they were able to basically test the crystal out using that wavelength, and they found that it just bounced off. It formed this perfect mirror that would bounce the signal at 90 degrees. And so this would be a perfect junction. In fiber optics, it's always, you know, difficult in fiber optics. You have to have a bend radius, and you can't turn the signal tighter than that bend radius, so the fiber optics will break. And it's really hard to make, you know, effective junctions that can, you know, bounce the signals at 90 degrees or angle the signals without losing signal quality. So quasicrystals were, you know, pretty big discovery in terms of, you know, what the future of, you know, how we can build these photonic gates and ways of, you know, using photonics for quantum information processing. So the whole idea of these optical materials opens up, you know, a whole new world of, you know, optical, you know, photonic quantum computing using light, and what we could build if we could, you know, do a quasicrystal touching a metamaterial that, you know, to a wave, you know, basically you build waveguides, metamaterial waveguides that connect to quasicrystals for the junctions or however, and you could build a whole really complicated computer system out of, you know, atom by atom in a very complicated structure. And I'm not saying that I could build such a thing, but aliens probably could. And,
Right. Right.
you know, and if Gary Nolan over there in his lab that is looking at pieces of, you know, something that's built like this, you know, how the heck is he going to extract any information from him, or you know, how is he going to extract any information from that chip, you know, like, or be able to tell what's on there without, you know, some serious, you know, the way to hook up to that, you know? I mean, we still don't have the technology to even hook up to something like that, you know what I mean?
He was just talking about some of that on his Lex show a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, you saw that. So
yeah, I did.
I love that. That was great.
Yeah, that was
like,
good.
Now I'm like, now the scientist, this is what got me into this, man. I'm
right.
like, more scientists thinking about this and looking into this, because it's so real, and he doesn't really get into the nuts and bolts of it, you know. And I text him, any insights into how this technology might work, and he's like, no, nothing at this time. So I started sending him all this stuff, and I'm like,
Like,
oh,
give me something,
give me
right?
something here. I have this, I have
Right.
this, I have this. Like, what
That's
do you think?
great.
What do you think about that? Like, and he didn't respond, but you know, at least know that, you know, there are people like talking about this, and maybe the thing is that it's not on the position of these academics to jump out on that kind of a limb that early on like that. That's my job. My job's to jump out on the limb and be like, oh, look, it's safe. Look, I'm bouncing on here. It's cool.
Right.
Come
It's
on,
all
go
good.
a little further. You know, so that's sort of monkeying around with the physics.
Well, I mean, that's what they take little pieces, and if they can show this little thing, then maybe they can move on to the next thing. Like, you know, they have to show their work in a way that somebody else, you can just be out there on the limb, like, you know.
Right, the what ifs, and you know, we're here to talk crazy, talk to alien scientists. So we're talking the future of this stuff.
Right.
And hey,
what made you pick that name for
I really
your
think
channel?
that this is possible. I really think that this stuff is real, and you know, it's almost like you would be in possession of this and wouldn't even know what, you wouldn't have any idea what to do with it, you know.
Right.
For the majority, you know, the people that would have some of the equipment to be able to start looking at that stuff would be that guy Isaac Kemp's lab over there at Wright State. You know, those guys got some serious equipment and might be able to do some kind of interesting analysis, but and also, you know, be able to produce the terahertz, because that's one of the things that they said was that they didn't have the terahertz to they needed to give it to the U.S. Army, and they signed that CRADA and gave that material to the Army because they needed the terahertz, a power source or a wave source that could produce terahertz to do the experiment. And the only lab that they thought they knew of was, you know, the Army. I was like, well, why not the Air Force, you know?
Man.
You know, because the Air Force is doing all this research, and I found out about that with that story, you know, and that guy, and you know, they also have the labs and everything to do that research, but nobody's talking about the Air Force. And then Mellon and Elizondo published, you know, this article on why the Air Force is, you know, supposedly silent and all this, but you guys are silent on the Air Forces too, man. You know, you gave this material to the Army when the Air Force has got the labs and the scientists that really know this stuff. So I don't know, is that a misdirection? Is that deception? I don't know, but it might just be, I just view it as these guys aren't scientists and they don't know enough about the, you know, what's really going on with this, because they're not in it and they're not involved in it. So
Right. Yeah, they know just enough to talk about it, but they don't have the specifics, you know. They don't have the in-depth knowledge.
But that was even better with did you see the Jesse Michaels had Hal Puthoff and Eric Weinstein on?
No, I love Eric Weinstein, but no, I have not seen that. Now I'm gonna have to go look for it.
He just released it like a week ago, so you got to go check out.
I will go check that out for sure.
And Puthoff interview, that was another key one, because Puthoff,
love Eric Weinstein.
Puthoff worked on a lot of the theoretical stuff. He had that whole polarizable vacuum model of general relativity that changed those variables, which changed the speed of light, and, you know, said, well, wait, maybe we can tweak, we can, you know, do something with Einstein after all, you know.
Just maybe.
Yeah, because that's what all the scientists use, is say, no, Einstein. You know, Albert Einstein.
Yeah, well, that's the go-to reference, man. That's the guy, right?
He is the guy.
He is the guy. I mean, he is the guy, but, you know, that's not the only guy, right? Who do you think has been if you had to pick the most influential, the person that's done the most influential science as it pertains to the field of ufology, who would you pick, and what do you think was their most important contribution?
Oh, one person?
Yeah, I know you probably have a list of like 10 or 15 top guys, but like, who?
Yeah, I mean, Wheeler is one I always go back to and talk about because he was one of the first. He published papers with Einstein and many of Einstein's colleagues, and he was Richard Feynman's PhD advisor,
Mm-hmm.
and he published all those papers on it from bit, quantum non-locality, like all this stuff back
Did you say T.
back in the
Townsend?
day.
Is that who you said just now?
John Archibald Wheeler.
Oh, okay.
Who was the other guy? Townsend?
T. Townsend Brown.
Oh, T. Townsend Brown. T. Townsend Brown wasn't he wasn't actually a PhD physicist. He got a bachelor's degree in physics, and he was, he discovered and seen that effect, and became kind of obsessed with it for his, and pursued it for, the next 10, 20 years after that. Got, did a lot of research with a number of labs, Bonson Labs down in North Carolina. He also did VeroCorp or what was the name of the other one? Homestead or Land something Industries. He had his own company for a while, and his daughter ran a lot of it, and then his daughter published a lot of his work after his death. His daughter's still out there, I think. It'd be cool to get a hold of her and try to trying to get her for an interview. But yeah, Townsend Brown's an interesting guy, but he was more of an experimentalist and also a dreamer, and he was trying to sell the technology as anti-gravity when a lot of it, what he was working on, was really ion wind and magnetohydrodynamics type science, not actual anti-gravity. But yeah, Wheeler, I think, had a lot of the theoretical stuff figured out back in the day with quantum gravity and what they were working on. Certainly an interesting guy, but then Daniel Shechtman, as I mentioned, with quasi crystals and everything, they all did their own little contribution in different fields.
Right.
There's many pieces to this. Roger Penrose and John Pendry.
Yeah, Penrose, for sure.
With the coming out with the tilings and a lot of the math for the quasi crystals and
no UFO Mark, not Bob Lazar.
Yeah, as far as contributions to science, Bob Lazar put Area 51 on the map and
He certainly did that.
Got a lot of interesting people interested in reverse engineering UFOs, but as far as pure science, Bernard Hayes is the real Bob Lazar. The guys that are like the real Bob Lazar. So a real Caltech physicist who was really a senior staff physicist for Lockheed Martin and did classified work on aerospace programs. Dr. Bernard Hayes. He's an interesting guy. It's Haisch. I'll type it in chat.
Haisch.
Yeah. He's a super interesting guy. Lots of interesting published works on a lot of different related topics. Hal Puthoff is definitely one of the senior scientists guys who is, he's got some interesting past and some of the stuff he worked on psychological operations and also worked with like some weird sci-spies stuff for the U.S. Army Psychological Warfare Operations Center and some stuff. But he did some good physics papers and research, with a number of these other scientists and has written some stuff with these guys on, inertia and some of the concepts behind how UFOs might work,
Right.
And then Jack Sarfati. Of course, you can't forget Jack Sarfati and the hippies saved physics.
Good answer. Hey, Fat Elvis, good to see you.
Well,
Think of
yeah,
another
buddy.
physicist who's really contributed a lot to this knowledge. Well, Alcubierre certainly started a lot of this back in '94 when he published that first warp drive paper, with the the Alcubierre,
Oh,
the
yes.
Alcubierre drive. So he actually jump started a lot of this interest in this within the physics community, because it was kind of still taboo and kind of thought of as outside before that. And then when he published that, they were like, hey, you know, even when I first heard about warp drive even a couple of years ago, you know, when I first, you know, I've been doing research in all this anti-gravity physics and all this other stuff, and then someone's like, no, warp drive is where it's at. It's you know, you're wasting your time with this anti-gravity stuff. Everything they're doing is warp drive, and it's related to these things called Dirac holes, is what this guy told me. And I'm like, Dirac holes, eh? And so I started, you know, looking in. Warp drive would just seem like, and when I first started talking about it, making videos on it, I had Richie from Boston was like, he thought he went off on me, and he was like, made a whole video like saying I'd gone mad and I was out of my mind with this warp drive stuff. And I was like, oh, if I could just go watch Star Trek, yeah, Spock. And
I can see that too, right?
I was like, all right, well, I don't think it's that crazy, you know. And then you know, but the more I started talking about it and doing videos on it and stuff, the more people, like, you know, started, you know, warming up to the idea, I guess. So I think this is where it's going in the future, is creating these wormholes with these two-dimensional surfaces. And, you know, little mini wormholes just on the surface of the craft. And it has to do with these Dirac holes and these, you know, populated electron states on the surface. And yeah, so dilithium, yeah, the dilithium crystals, that was that was how they made it, the anti-gravity in Star Trek or something.
It's definitely the dilithium, man.
Yeah.
And then we'll move to the spore drive. It'll be fine. This is fine.
Yeah, go watch that Put Off interview. Hell yeah, you'll enjoy that one.
This'll be fine. I will.
Yeah, so Dirac holes and also Dirac cones are this whole probability states with you know, these electron holes. It's a way of modeling, you know, the physics of semiconductors, which is what you have when you have these surfaces that they talk about, where it's a band of a dielectric between two mirrors, and the two mirrors on either side of the dielectric create this total internal reflection effect, where everything gets reflected internally. And so it creates this waveguide channel where you can just pump a ton of, you know, energy into, and it will just get trapped there between the two layers. So there's a whole bunch of papers on this. Put Off cites one in a talk that he gives by this guy Victor Podolsky, and that's the left-hand. If you look up that name with left-handed metamaterials, you'll find an interesting paper on the science of how some of that stuff might work. And I wish they talked more about that on Weinstein, but Weinstein was so green and new to this physics that he really didn't know the right questions to ask in that interview. But I do think that Weinstein did some good research, though, because I actually had tipped off his about 6 months ago. I don't know if he'd gotten that from me per se. He might have heard about it from other sources as well, because you know, it's out there. It's not like I own that information. Right. But I had sent it to Brett Weinstein, and I had emailed it to Eric. I had sent it to Eric and also to his brother Brett, who I'd been in direct communication with. I talked to Eric on the phone at one point.
Yeah, I think they both do great work.
I think they both do awesome work, and they're both kicking major ass. And absolutely. And I thought that was great that he in that interview he talked about the invisible college, and he talked about Bryce DeWitt in that interview. He talks about you know, that invisible college. He didn't mention Wheeler or some of the other colleagues that they might have had, because Wheeler definitely had a go-between. Wheeler didn't like to ever leave Princeton. He stayed. He didn't like to travel. He didn't like to leave. He just, you know, So I know that he wasn't selected to go to Battelle and look at the materials firsthand. They would have had to been brought to him, or he would have had to have a go-between. But there's some interesting people around this whole crew. But then the Battelle hosted this whole talk on this whole forum on physics back in 1967 called the Battelle Rencontres, and Wheeler and Bryce Dewitt put it together, and it had this whole thing about Lie groups and all the stuff that they're now talking about in physics, decades later, right? So all this stuff, they were onto it, and it looks like that got covered up and replaced with string theory. Like this guy Ed Witten, his father was like one of these top theorists who was working on all this secret gravity stuff with these guys, this secret group, right? And then his son, comes out and I don't know, they basically reorganized physics to push everyone after string theory. And Eric Weinstein even says, if you were trying to stagnate a field and make sure they got nowhere, like string theory seems like a pretty good way to do it.
Yep.
And because he thinks that they were trying to protect secret knowledge and make sure that physicists could get a lot of could figure out a lot of things that they're not supposed to using physics and stuff. So you better keep them busy with pointless real mathematical gymnastics. Some real serious mathematical gymnastics. If they can get through that, then they'll be stuck just doing mathematical cartwheels for the rest of their lives, forever, and we won't have to worry about them.
Seems legit.
Yep.
Yeah. So I don't know. It seems kind of legit, especially when you look at that Battelle Rencontres, and they were talking about all the stuff with the Lie groups and the E8 theory. And then, we didn't have that stuff coming out until, Garrett Lisi and some of these other physicists with, quantum gravity research group talking about those using those group theory models to model all of quantum mechanics and stuff. But these guys were onto it back in the 60s. And then where did it go for 4 decades, 5 decades, So.
Right.
It's certainly interesting because that whole model of the universe as this sort of connected group makes a lot of sense, and the it from bit idea that we can crack this, that we can get close and crack the source code. We're gonna be able to. That's gonna scare whatever's out. That's starting to scare whatever's out there. Eric Weinstein even says in the interview, I love that part where he's like, when we sent off that first atomic bomb or the first hydrogen bomb. We sent a very clear signal to the cosmos, that said, hey, we're almost there. We've almost figured out source code.
Right.
And I'm sure whoever was listening, did not take it.
Yeah, it was like, oh, shit.
That's when all the ships started showing up, man. It was obvious.
Yeah.
For sure.
A lot of them, I mean, not all of them. It's been going on through history. Here and there, but
they came in droves.
They sent their surveillance squad. And I think they're still here.
Yeah. Well, Jeremy, we don't want to keep you too much longer. I want to say, first of all, I really, really appreciate the work that you're doing over there. You guys I put the link to his channel in there. Go and check out his channel. He's got these APEC conferences. It has all this scientific stuff and these scientists. I've really been getting into that lately. It's just, you'll see when you go over there and check it out. He's got endless stuff on all this stuff if this stuff piques your interest. And I think it's awesome what you're doing, and I'm just grateful for what you do. I'm glad I found you, and it's been this is stuff I really want to learn about. I didn't really even know there was somebody that does that. You know what I mean? Like, I've just so yes, this is good. I'm glad that I was introduced to your channel and the content on it, and I'm glad that there's somebody working on this stuff, and I really hope that y'all get a ship built and that we're able to successfully make some progress in this stuff. And I want to ask you something else, and then I'll turn it over to Foil. How do we create more unity in ufology? What's the answer there? How do we get everybody to get on the same team and start working together against the powers that were, instead of trying to box each other all the time? How do we do that?
The
I
answer
think
is
we
cage
gotta
match.
we gotta have
Right.
a big UFO cage match
Octagon.
on pay-per-view. UFO octagon on pay-per-view, and just have us all fight it out in the muddy.
Yeah,
That's how we
buddy.
fund the UFO.
I'm down.
That's how we fund your
I'm
prototype.
down.
You know?
Hey, I'll fight to fund
And,
that.
like-
Oh, I'll do it. Hell yeah. Count me in.
Right? I'm down.
To fund your prototype? Hell yeah, dude.
No,
I'll
but
do it.
seriously, I'm working on it. You know, I'm trying to unite a couple two big camps that are a little, you know, have some long-standing beef, and I don't know what it's all about, because I think it's all pretty silly, and that we could, you know, we could do so much more if we fought, you know. If we picked a common enemy and went after them instead of going after each other. There's you know, I've gone after a couple people in this community myself from time to time too, and I wouldn't mind getting in that octagon.
There you go. I'm with it, man. I'm with it. Right?
Too, but I don't know, man. We'll keep that option on the table, but I
For
think
funding.
it's really like there's a lot of people coming together but then there's fighting too, because there's these established camps, and it's like high school, like we were talking about before. It's so much high school. It's like there's all these cliques, and there's all these different tables, which, you know, these people don't like them sitting at this table and that table, and it's all division by design. We got to. I think that there's a lot of forces out there trying to amp it up too, to keep a lot of that division going, so that they can control the narrative.
Absolutely.
So, but we're breaking through slowly. It's just about the enemy is the swamp, and also the hoaxers and the fakers and the frauds and stuff too. So, and that gets on tricky water, because, you know, there's money in it, and so, like, you know, where there's people who are making money off these frauds and hoaxes, they're gonna have friends that are in it for the money too, and I don't know. There's an ugly side of it.
Man.
Right.
There's a bunch of different sides of it, and it's just you know, and people need to stop falling for everything too. I know I want to believe too, and that's like summed up the biggest problem with ufology, is the whole I want to believe. No, we should want the proof, and we should want, like, the evidence, and
Right.
you know, this phenomenon is a little tricky to understand. There's more sides of it too, so that you know, a lot of people come for the spiritual and the you know, the whole enlightened as existential, you know, side of this, but then there's people that just come for the knowledge of and the science and the understanding of our universe, and trying to, you know, just figure out what the heck is going on with all of it. So it's cool. I thank you guys again for doing this.
So
And
glad
thank
you
for coming
came.
on my show last night, Alara. That was
thank you
awesome to
for
have you
for inviting me, and thank you for, you know, sharing my channel with people, and, you know, being a gracious host. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So
Awesome.
did you have any announcements before we go, or?
Right. What do you got coming up?
Conspiracy theory trivia on Friday, of course.
No, I mean, what does he have coming up? Is what I'm asking.
Oh, what do you asking?
But hey,
I
go
think
ahead
you
and
got
jump
it.
ahead.
In fact,
Well, that's
probably,
fine.
I mean, I'm going to be planning a trip down to the lab soon, and I don't know. I'm just I don't really have anything, you know, super awesome or cool planned, but we got the interview with Sal Pace coming up the end of next month, and I have a ton of great questions I already gave to Kurt to go and ask for Sal Pace, and looking forward to that, and just looking forward to more content coming out from these people pushing the science side of this, and you know, getting these debates into the universities, and getting more. I feel like I know for a fact that I've gotten people to go to school for physics because they watch stuff on my channel and realize, oh, this is really awesome, and I want to learn about this. And I know that, you know, I've reached out to people in physics that are like, you know, have learned something from you know, the stuff that I've put together too. So right. I hope that continues, and I hope that this community, I just hope that even more people come forward out of the woodwork, that we get a guy like Bob Lazar who really did, who, I'm not saying, I have my issues with Bob Lazar and I have my skepticism about him, but again, if Bob Lazar came on and gave a technical briefing at APEC, that would be awesome. But if another guy who worked on stuff like could come on and just drop the ball, then that would be great too. And
right. Well, you're doing I've been watching you for a while. You're doing fantastic. I'm so glad that you joined us here. Hopefully, you guys go check him out. Check out what he's doing. The work is excellent, guys. I see you already did the scratching.
Now, I already did the scratching. Now, Foil, what shows you got coming up? Let me announce
Conspiracy Theory Trivia. That's it.
That's it. Just Conspiracy Theory Trivia on Friday on
Foil's
channel.
Yes.
And let's see. We're doing Sunday. We'll do Space Force News at 9 p.m. Eastern, and then next Monday, we will be doing 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern, going back to our normal time for a minute at least. It's going to be different every Monday, and we're going to be doing Conspiracy Couch. It's coming back. We'll be doing number stations and ghost radio stations. That will be the topic. So, if you got any insight on that, definitely call in and hang out with us. It's been great having you on, Jeremy. Thanks for coming on. And on that note, good night to everyone.
Catch you on the flip side.
All right.